Hello and welcome to another Hoya video. I don't think I should do intros anymore. You know it's going to be most likely about Hoyas. I can just say hello and, how are you? Though you cannot really reply to me right away, so that also doesn't make sense. You know what? Intros in general don't make sense. Today I wanted to talk about Hoyas that have arrived to me in the past 6 months or so. So they have not all arrived at the same time, different time of arrival, and on some of them I do have a label when they arrived, and on most of them, actually I don't have on any of them. Okay, so that I imagined that. I approximately know when they arrived, and there are videos on the channel, and I will tell you which haul you can watch to see how they arrived, but I will also try to insert the footage so you can see what they looked like. Most of them have recovered, I would say. One still doesn't look as good, but we are going to talk about that. It's my fault. I completely take the responsibility. But the majority of them look good and they need some work done on them, which we will do today. And I will also tell you how you can rescue a Hoya that arrives to you in a bad condition. So I think a lot of these looked really, really bad when they arrived, and I felt a bit ridiculous showing them in the haul video because there was literally nothing to see. But today you will see how they have recovered. So, in the future, if something like that happens to you, do not despair and know that they can be saved. They're really tough plants. I mean, a lot of them are not going to recover, but majority of them can really bounce back from that. I also have one Hoya that arrived okay, but I just wanted to talk about it because it did nothing for the 6 months that I've had it. And I wanted to check the roots. It arrived again. It looks the same like when it arrived, and I have no idea what's going on. So I think we're gonna look over that one and, see if there are some issues on the plant. But I'm just going to start showing you the Hoyas one by one. And then in the second part of the video, I'm gonna change the angle a little bit and we will do some work with them. One of the first Hoyas that I am glad that recovered is my Hoya carrii. I have wanted Hoya carrii for a very long time, and you can see she definitely did recover. And I'm just going to bring her a bit closer to the camera. Basically, you can see there what it looks like now. It has pushed out 6 new leaves, and it's pushing out a vine, and the leaves are just absolutely beautiful. New leaves have this deep, I don't really want to say brown color because it's not really, well, it is maybe a shade of brown. Maybe it's like deep bronze, though it's really not bronze. But you can see in the camera, and please tell me what color is this, because I don't know. So they have this beautiful coloring on them, and then they turn dark green. It's one of the darkest Hoya leaves. The reason why they look so dark is because of the texture. This leaf feels like some of the velvety anthuriums. Not exactly, but it just feels so nice to the touch. It's really a gorgeous Hoya. I would really say this is a must-have. If you don't like small-leaved Hoyas, you're gonna love Hoya carrii for sure. This has arrived with a long vine, and when my friend Carolina sent a cutting to me, it had multiple leaves, right? It was probably, I would say, this size, if not even longer. So it lost all of the leaves, and it was only left with one tiny leaf that you can see here, and that leaf didn't look good. I think it had maybe one more leaf, but that one fell off basically as soon as I potted it. So not great condition, and the reason for that is because it wasn't long in the male, but it was a heat wave. It was 38 or 39 degrees, so that plant definitely did not love it. But it was in the male for about 7 or 8 days, I think. So this Hoya, I would say, is particularly sensitive. I did ask around a bit, and some people said they didn't have issues shipping it. Some said that they did. It seems that it does better when it is rooted. So maybe that is the best way to ship it. I certainly did not have much luck because my friend Farah sent me another Hoya carrii, and I think the cutting was also about the same size. And that one arrived with all the leaves attached. However, they fell off. They fell off the next day. They started to fall off one by one, and they looked yellow when they arrived, but I was just hoping maybe that's okay. It wasn't, and that one didn't make it. So not all of them will survive. This was very lucky. I think that the stem was well preserved. The stem was green too. If you receive a Hoya that has lost the leaves, but the stem is viable, you have a very good chance of rescuing it. The way that I did rescue this Hoya is I put it in pon, and it was in a small propagation box because, you know, we don't need a giant propagation box for leafless vines. You can see that I did wrap it around, and basically that is so we could get more roots. Now, I think it did have a bit of roots, so technically it should have done well, but I think because of the heat it didn't. However, what I decided to do is put the rest of the vine in the pot just to get more roots. Now, we are going to take a look at the roots today, because what I would like to do is I would like to cut this part off. I would like to have this as a separate plant, and then what can happen is the base can branch out, because, you know, we would like to get more growth. Now, that will depend. We will see how many roots it has, this part that I would like to cut. Maybe I will not disturb it. The other option is just to put a trellis and call it a day. But I don't think it's going to look so nice, and it is going to bother me for sure. I know myself, and I know it's going to bother me. So I'm actually going to try and see if it can be cut. But that is something for later. Another Hoya that arrived from my friend Carolina is Hoya piestolepis, and this is Hoya piestolepis NS16002. I may not have the good accession number. It's either 002 or 092, but I think this one is 002. So this one arrived in an okay condition. It wasn't the best because it also had more leaves and they started to drop, and as you can see, this was the cutting. The cutting was also very big, very generous. This was one of the leaves on the top, and then you can see we have a leaf here as well on the bottom, and nothing in between. Well, it did have leaves in between, but unfortunately, again, it did not love the shipping. So as you can see, it started to push out a new vine, and the first leaf was a bit awkward looking, and this can happen when they suffer, you know, if they don't love the shipping. The first couple of leaves that they push out may end up looking very weird, very small, but you can see the next pair of leaves is actually very beautiful. I do have a different clone of Hoya piestolepis from Betsy, and that one actually makes larger leaves. Now you can see we have a big vine on this one. So all of this grew, and this arrived, I think, in July. So I think what I will do is I will only trellis this. I would eventually like to cut it, and I'm not gonna do that now, but I think if I could just cut it here, because again, I don't really like to see the bare stems, but we'll see about that. I think first I'm gonna let it grow out and see maybe if we can, you know, maybe it can bush out and I can wrap it around several times and then cover this. But typically, you know, I would cut it here and then have two Hoya piestolepis, but I think I'm gonna leave it for now. It is taking its time with making the leaves on this vine, so I just think we need to give it a bit of support. Now I'm going to try to be very gentle with it, and I hope that the vine doesn't die back. This Hoya is one of the Hoyas that likes to twine around something, which wasn't very helpful when I was trying to get this out of the tent. It twined around the net in the back of the tent. I think maybe a tower trellis will do well for it. I do want to check the roots. Maybe it needs to be even repotted. Ooh, okay, so there are roots. So I actually might repot this one. Both of these, actually I think all of these Hoyas do grow in my grow tent, in my Mars Hydro grow tent, under the 300 watt light. So the light is dimmed to about 25%, that's 75 watts. And you will see on some of these Hoyas that it's simply too much for them. Not for all of them, but for some of them it is simply too much. I have a couple, at least, that would prefer lower light. I did try to put them a bit lower, but I think it's still a bit too much. For something like piestolepis, it seems that Hoya piestolepis loves that light. Both of them, because I have two growth tents, they are in separate growth tents. Both of them are growing fantastically. Hoya carrii seems to love the light, and another Hoya that I will show to you also seems to enjoy the higher light. So it's interesting for me to see, because some of these I assumed would like a higher light, but they don't. And I'm also just surprised to see how low of the light some of them want. So that's always interesting for me to see. And I do like to mention it so people would know, because not all Hoyas look great in higher light. Example is here. And another example, actually both of them don't really look great under the higher light. While some of them will sun stress beautifully, and I do have one that looks fantastic. You will see it. The new leaf is gorgeous. The next plant that I have is Hoya solaniflora NS12277. This is the true Hoya solaniflora. So all the other clones are not the true Hoya solaniflora, but this one is. And if you remember, this one really looked terrible. And it just did not enjoy the shipping one single bit. The two leaves at the bottom that you can see, and those are the greener leaves, they were very, very floppy, very dehydrated. The rest of the leaves fell off. It was actually a pretty long cutting from here to here. So I don't know if we can see that. And it just did not look good. The leaves that stayed on floppy, and they started to fall off very quickly, like the same day they started to fall off. And these on the bottom were also very soft. I actually did not think this was gonna make it. I did not have a lot of faith, because I just thought this was a more, I mean, it is not, I mean, I don't know, maybe it is a sensitive Hoya, but I thought it was more sensitive, and I really thought it was not going to make it. But as you can see, she did make it. And unfortunately, I did expose it to very high light. In my opinion, it's not very high light. In my opinion, it's maybe medium bright light. It's in the corner of the grow tent, so it's quite a bit away from the light. In a different tent, in the same corner, I have something like Hoya flagellata, and I had a Hoya puvoaensis and Hoya pandurata. So this one, it seems to me that it's too much light for it. I actually did lose a couple of leaves on it while they were growing, and they just yellowed and fell off. Now, it could be a watering issue, but it seems to me that actually the light is just a bit too much. Now, you can see these actually went in between some other Hoyas, so they're actually looking better. They're more green. They're still a bit too much sun stressed, so I don't know. Maybe I move this one all the way to the bottom. All of that aside, you can see that this plant really grew a lot. So this arrived in July in terrible condition. It spent a lot of the time in the prop box. After about 2 weeks, the leaves did start to firm up. But compared to some other cuttings that arrived well, this had to spend, I think, 3 or 4 weeks more. The same with Hoya carrii, and the same with Hoya piestolepis. All of these were in the prop box for much longer than some of the other ones that arrived well. With this one, all I did is I potted it up, and I really couldn't do much in terms of laying it flat. I didn't have enough space. But if you ever receive a Hoya that only has a couple of leaves, and it didn't arrive well, and it has a long vine, like the case with my Hoya carrii, do try to pin that vine down, because it will root, and that will help the plant plump up even faster. I think this was actually unrooted, so that's why it also took a little bit longer for it to start to plump up and to grow. However, it is growing really well. It turns out that this is one fast Hoya. I'm not in love with, the look here. A lot of things are happening, and I would like to wrap this vine around. So maybe I will try to do a better job with trellising in the next section of the video. But also another thing that you can do, and I'm not going to do it because these leaves are still soft, so it's growing really fast, and before the leaves harden off, you have the next pair of leaves, and the next pair of leaves, and the next pair of leaves. So I'm just not going to cut it yet. I will wait for it to become bigger, and then maybe I will take a couple of cuttings to start it again to make a nice looking plant. Because again, a lot of the bare vines are here on the bottom, and then, we have bushier top. I'm just very happy about this one, that it made it. I really wasn't sure that it will, but it seems that it will. And I might actually even move it to my Millsbo cabinet. I do have a Mars Hydrolite in there, but that one is dimmed to about 30 watts. So there is a corner in there that looks shady enough for me. and maybe it will enjoy growing there, but I'll have to think about it. I think it's slightly lower humidity in the cabinet, so maybe we are not going to risk it. This Hoya is from Betsy. I received it again. I think this was a late July, perhaps. And do we have thrips? Okay, I think it's not thrips. But I did find thrips in one of my grow tents on my Florida Beauty, and I did not love that discovery. Do not recommend it, but I think I do not have thrips on this Hoya, so that's good. It's actually in the tent where this Hoya is. So this is Hoya evelinae. Now, I do have a Hoya that I got under the name Hoya apoda, and that one is doing really well. I don't know if they're the same. Some people say they are. I'm not really sure. I will see when this one blooms eventually if it will look the same or not. However, this one arrived as a 2-leaf unrooted cutting, and it was very, very, very dehydrated. I was sure this was done for, and I was really sad. I was really sad about the next one that I'm going to show you because they really did not love the shipping. Again, heat waves in Europe this summer were ridiculous. You could not get a day where it wasn't too hot, either in France or in Serbia. It's just way too difficult to find the best time to ship. However, this one made it, as you can see, and it pushed out a long vine. Today we are going to give her a trellis, but the new leaf, you can see how beautiful that is. And that is under higher light. It's just a fantastic color. It's not very close to the light because, as you can see on the bottom there, I did burn it a bit. But that could also be due to the fact that, you know, until this rooted, it was a bit dehydrated. So, you know, it's just when Hoyas are underwatered, they burn or sun stress more easily, so this could be why. Because I actually don't think it's much different, the light situation now, to when this burn happened, and it seems to me that it actually doesn't mind the higher light. When you get a Hoya that is very dehydrated, what I do is I soak them for 15 to 30 minutes. I make sure that the water is not cold, and you don't want hot water, so something that's around 20, 22, so ambient temperature water. And I put some algamic, which is seaweed, and I soak them for about 30 minutes, sometimes less, sometimes a bit more, just to get some of that seaweed in them. It seems to really do the trick. I remember reading that some people soak their cuttings in sugar water. Apparently getting those sugars to the plant really helps. So I have had a good experience with seaweed. Even when I was rooting Hoyas in water, if I put a drop of seaweed in distilled water, they just root so much faster. So if I get a Hoya that is very dehydrated, I will soak it in seaweed. After that, it went into a propagation box. It did take a long time for it to perk up. And you can see, I mean, it does look a bit yellow from that. So, you know, if something like that happens, don't worry. If the leaves still stay on, it's not a big concern. You can really expect that there will be some visual sign of the stress. So that can either be, you know, leaf goes a bit yellow, the tip of the leaf maybe becomes dry, maybe half of the leaf becomes dry. All of that is because of the stress. So what will happen first when you get a Hoya that is very dehydrated, usually what I see that happens first is that they start to push out roots and then the leaves perk up. However, there were situations where the leaves would firm up first and then the roots would come. This is in general what you can expect with the thin-leaved Hoyas: first roots and then firmer leaves. And I'm just going to check. I don't think this needs to be repotted yet, or it is the perfect time to repot it before the roots start coming out. I never know. It actually looks very, very well rooted. You can see from all the sides there are roots. So I actually think I'm just gonna leave it here and give it a trellis, but it's gonna need to be repotted soon. This is a Hoya that is also very likely prone to mites. I do know that my Hoya apoda, which may be evelinae at the end, is also very prone to mites. That one did start to grow and then it died back, and then it started to grow and then it died back, and then I cut it because I was sick of the ugly leaves. So it seems to be very prone to mites. It's just not a Hoya that you can really neglect they do like to be watered. So that's why this one is self-watering. And also when you're rooting it, make sure that you root it in something that's actually moist. I see some people attempt to root in a mix that's not moist, which makes no sense. How do you expect them to root? They have to be, the mix has to be moist. So I chose pond, but it was really, really moist. And what I do is I make sure that, you know, if I'm putting it in a pot, for example, and then I'm rooting the cutting in a pot, I will water it, let the water go away, put it in the box, and then generously spray on top, usually with some water with organic, because they need that extra humidity to root. So, you know, don't try to root in, I mean, I saw people try to root in dry leca, and I'm like, what is going on? This next Hoya, I can't remember, I think it was a 2-leaf cutting when it arrived, and this one was so floppy that I was actually very sad that Betsy even sent it to me, because it's a Hoya that I wanted a lot. And you can see it did receive a bit too much light, so we will work on that. This is Hoya, I got it as Hoya species frog foot, but I think Hoya species frog foot is actually Hoya amrita. And it is a Hoya that I really, really wanted again, and I didn't know that she was sending this plant to me. So when I got it, I was just so sad because, again, it did not love the shipping at all. Way too hot for it. But this one actually plumped up rather fast. I was surprised to see how quickly it rooted. And I rooted it in cocoa peat and perlite. I don't know what possessed me. When I'm taking cuttings of my plants for sale, I do root them in cocoa peat and perlite because it works really, really good. But sometimes when I receive a Hoya that I have for the first time, I usually don't risk it. I usually root it in pon because I know it's not going to rot in pon. However, I put this one in cocoa peat and perlite, and I was surprised within 4 days or so, it started to show sign of roots and it plumped up. So that was rather unexpected because Hoya evelinae, for example, was, you know, it arrived in the same condition, but it did need more time. And then, you know, I repotted it to this 8-centimeter pot. I did put some pon on the bottom. I did put some osmocote in there, but you can see that I did expose it. I mean, I don't think I exposed it again to high light, in my opinion. However, it seems that this Hoya really wants lower light than that. So it was in one of the baskets that are on my shelves in my grow tent, and that basket was under the Mars Hydrolite, but it was, I would say, 60 or 70 centimeters away. However, it seems that is just simply too much. Now I put it off to the side, and you can see I'm already getting bigger leaves, which is a sign that, you know, Hoya is growing in slightly lower light. It did produce a peduncle here, but unfortunately the buds fell off. So you can see there a tiny peduncle. That's very sad. I was hoping to see it in bloom. Actually, there are 2 peduncles. OUTs. Actually, I don't even know if the buds fell off. No, I don't think that the buds fell off. I think I just imagined the buds being larger. I think the buds are still on there. Discovery! I don't see. Are those buds? Where's my phone? Zoom in. My Dean McDowell is unfurling. I don't think I ever witnessed a leaf unfurling. It moved again. So exciting. What was I talking about? But yeah, I think those buds are still there. So I must have been imagining, which is not something that I do often. That's actually great. I have 2 peduncles already on this plant, so it may even bloom. This one, it seems to love cocoa peat and perlite, and it's always moist, which I know it's a surprise. That doesn't happen very frequently with my Hoyas, but I think that all of these thin-leaved Hoyas do prefer to stay moist at all times. Is that a thrip? It's not a thrip, it's something else. I'm now obsessed with thrips. Now, this next Hoya still doesn't look the best. This is Hoya exilis, also from Betsy. And you can see we have leaves here. We have roots everywhere. So I don't know how to show this to you because I put it in a hummus container, but I wrapped this vine around several times, and you know, some of the leaves, I have a leaf here that's really messed up. This leaf started to grow in between the pond and the wall of this container. So I'm going to take it out of this container and possibly cut it into several pieces because it is growing from several nodes here. Like there is a leaf, tiny leaf there. So I think we can probably take this as a cutting, and if it has some roots here, I can pot it, or I can, you know, divide this into several cuttings and pot them all together. It did not like being shipped again. I think maybe a good way to ship Hoya exilis is to ship it rooted or to ship it really fast and make sure that it's not too hot. Again, the heat really did not agree with this Hoya. But I think it was a good thing that I wrapped the vine around several times. I do see some good roots there. I really don't know yet what I will do. We will have to kind of unpot it and see what we are working with, but I do hope that it is possible to cut it into several plants because, you know, it would be nice to have a small pot with bushy looking exilis. But this one also, you know, I wrapped a vine around several times, pinned it down in several places, make sure to cover the vine a bit with pon. So this is the thing. Also, if you have a vine and you're trying to pin it down, if it's not touching the surface of the soil, it will most likely still root because the roots will go down, but I think it's just best if you cover it with just a thin layer. You can see here, that is actually covered by a thin layer of pon. I will make sure to get that in a different angle, maybe with my phone. You can see here, if I start to move this around, you can see that I did cover that vine with a thin layer of pon, and that's fine. Nothing rotted, it only rooted. So just this, that's enough. So that's maybe like one thin layer. Not all of them could be covered because not all of them I was successful with pinning down, but where I could cover them, actually this may have been covered, but I recently, it was caught on a different Hoya that I was trying to get out of the tent, and I pulled on it, and you can see that, you know, this was all in pon. That's one of the reasons why I am repotting it today. So I actually did not have much hope for Hoya exilis because, again, of that leaf that is more yellow than green, but it did really well again. I think it's because the cutting was so big. So in this case, the larger the cutting, I would say the more success you will have. If you get a one node cutting of something and it loses a leaf, the chances are very slim. However, if you have a cutting that is maybe, you know, this long, then your chances are good. But if you're just working with one node, one leaf, if someone sent me a cutting of Hoya piestolepis and it was only this, so one leaf here and one node, that probably would not make it. I'm not saying it's not going to for sure, but I'm saying the chances are much smaller than if you were to receive a larger cutting. How you decide to deal with this is completely your own thing. You can write to the seller, ask for a replacement cutting. I'm not going to get into that today. And we only have one more Hoya for today. Now, this doesn't have much to do with the story. So this arrived in May of 2022 from Camilla. This is Hoya patella white. And she does not aspire to become a plant, it seems. She aspires to look like a cutting forever, not even an attempt at growth. I did treat it for mites, but as you can see, that has not been fruitful. I think she is rooted, but I don't think she has a massive root system. Now, Hoya patella pink, on contrary, grows really, really fast. So it might be that this one is not in love with pon. I will unpot it and check on the roots, and maybe I will move it to something like cocoa peat and perlite just to see if that is going to make a difference. At this point, I don't know if it's good to disturb it or not. Maybe it wants to start to grow, but again, I really see no indication, no attempts, nothing. So I will make sure to deal with this. I'm not going to go into it too much right now because, again, this one arrived well and it's looking okay, but really in 6 months, not even an attempt at growth, something is wrong. Okay, I think it's time to do some work with these Hoyas, and I think I'm going to start with Hoya carrii, and then we're not going to do anything with this one. I think that one looks great. So amrita is fine. The rest of them are either going to get a trellis or a repot. Well, that is a very improved angle, isn't it? That's a little bit better. So this is the work style, the work hair. We have to lift everything up. Otherwise, I'm going to get annoyed. First, we will take care of this Hoya carrii. So I'm going to be gentle with her because I don't know what the roots look like. So you can see we do have some roots there and we have a lot of roots there. I don't think I'm going to cut it. I think I would just like a bit more roots than that. That's not a lot. I do want to put a trellis, so that probably demands a slightly larger pot. These are actually very narrow trellises. Okay, it does fit into this pot. Let's see if I can do something with that. If I can actually put it back in the same pot and have it on this trellis as well. It does feel very sensitive, I have to tell you. It feels like you could easily mess up the roots on this plant. Trying to get this vine inside. You know, I think it's fine. I think we can do it. I think we can pot it and make it look good. We just need this plant to be slightly more cooperative. So I can push this vine down. And it doesn't matter if I push it down, it's going to be fine. It's not going to rot, for sure. Well, not for sure, nothing is for sure. You would not even know that anything happened to this plant. You would think this is the way it's supposed to look. Excellent. So the rest of that vine is going to root. See, I managed to get it all in. I don't know if anyone can even see that. So now what is left to do is trellis it. I think just one of these is going to be enough. This is supposed to be a very fast grower. It hasn't been so far, but I think that is about to change, or at least I hope it is about to change. So I'm just going to, I'm gonna put this up. I'm probably going to let it grow up and then start wrapping it around at some point, but that is Hoya carrii that absolutely came back from the dead. And I think the next one, I think I need to do exilis, because I think that's going to be hard. Let's just gently unpot this. I said gently, Miro. Ooh, that's too fast. There is a peduncle, I didn't see that. Oh, wow, okay. Yeah, we can cut this. We can comfortably cut this. Well, I mean, comfortably is maybe being a bit generous, but... Okay, I think 3 cuttings. One of the cuttings is not going to look the best, but it does have good roots, and I think it's going to grow. So this is exilis. Now, I think I can cut it right there. That big chunk of roots. So just before that peduncle, there is that small leaf there, and then some roots. So I think that's going to be fine. And then this base section also has roots. It has 1 yellow leaf, 1 slightly green leaf, and a new growth there. So I think I'm cutting it in 3 pieces right now, and I think that's going to be absolutely fine. It's good that this one has so many roots here, so I'm just going to cut it above that peduncle. So that's cutting number 1, and then cutting number 2 is gonna look a bit poop-like, just above that new growth. And then this is cutting number 3. Hoya exilis is supposed to actually be a fast grower, so that's good. And I think we can just secure this vine to the trellis, because this vine does want to escape a bit. Why am I adding pon without putting the final cutting in? I'm going to put this cutting. This one will be potted a bit higher in the pot because the stem is shorter. So, I mean, I could actually take a couple of more cuttings, but I'm not gonna overdo it. I don't even know if you can see that. I don't even know if I can see that. Okay, that's a bit too much. You know, it's not the best example of my trellising. We're gonna agree it's not the best. However, like, listen, this Hoya is gonna do great. Okay, I know it looks ridiculous, but it's gonna look great in 2 months. So we do have roots here, as you can see, on this side. There is some pawn hanging there. I could have cut there because there are a couple of nodes, but I'm not gonna push it. I think if this works, if all 3 of these continue to grow, and I think they will, I'm gonna be happy enough with that situation. Hoya evelinae is just getting a trellis. I'm not a big fan of putting a trellis in pawn. And this, I call this the corner trellis, invented and patented by Miro. Unfortunately, these pots are not super flexible, so I don't want to squish them. But that is what I would typically do. I would squish them a bit and make sure that it goes in all the way. Okay, I think that's fine in the sense that it's absolutely unstable. And I don't think it goes more than 2 centimeters. I'm just gonna put it back into its container. And I'm not going to do much here. Really not a fan of trellising. I don't know if I will ever become a fan of trellising. It's just a bit nerve-wracking. The vine is pointing up and no one got damaged along the way. It looks like that. Hopefully it's not going to mind it. I would like it to keep growing on this small trellis. I would kind of like it to keep growing in this small pot, actually. So if you could do that for me, I would be very grateful. Thank you. What I can do now is just fix the trellising on this one. Because I would like these parts to be trellised, they're getting into other plants. Otherwise, I would probably leave it if that wasn't the case, because I think this is great. Okay, so what's the plan? I think going as low as we can with this branch here is our best bet, because then, you know, it's gonna stay towards the bottom. It's gonna look like it's supposed to be like this. Okay, I think this is working. This one I'm just gonna let it go up. Not bad, Miro. Soon you can have a trellising masterclass. The biggest scam of the 21st century. Miro giving a trellising class. I'm getting better at this. Okay, I think this looks better. Like, come on. It almost looks normal. It looks better. I have decided this looks amazing. Okay, the last thing that I have to do is repot that. I actually have 2 more things that I need to do. I need to take out the patella, see what's going on there, and repot my Hoya piestolepis. So I don't even know if we can get it out without damaging the roots, but let's hope we can. These work for some, not for all. Same with the tower. Work for some, not for all. Let's just get this out. I'm gonna try to gently untangle the roots, but they're very tangled at the bottom, which means someone should have done this sooner. You can pass. I have seen cats squeeze through many things, so I'm sure you can squeeze through that as well. So that's nice. Nice roots for this pot. I think that's gonna look great with a nice trellis. Okay, I have teleported myself with a trellis, so we're gonna use this big trellis for this Hoya, and I think it's gonna work really well. I'm starting to think that I was right in my last video, that my issues were just trellises that were too narrow. But let's see if I can trellis this and have it look decent-ish. Good job, me. So that's Hoya piestolepis. We do need a larger cover pot for that. It seems that it's much easier to wrap them around the big trellises. Who would have knew? Who would have known? Clearly not me, grammar. And the last is Hoya patella. So let's just do that quickly. So see, she has roots. She has roots and no root mealybugs. I'm just gonna leave it in pawn. I'm gonna put it in a smaller, slightly smaller pot, but I don't think that's an issue. So she does have a good root system. I do fear if I put it into something that's not pawn now, that she's not gonna do well. I might do another spider mite treatment just to make sure. but I mean, there's no rot at all. Not even a tiny bit. Maybe she wants a trellis. That is all for today. I hope that you enjoyed this video and that it maybe gives you a bit more confidence or hope if you receive a Hoya that doesn't arrive well, and you can see that they can definitely recover. All of these were, except Hoya patella, all of these were in pretty rough shape when they arrived, and sometimes it doesn't even matter if it's a couple of leaves on the plant left if they're severely dehydrated. I mean, 3 of them were left basically with 1 leaf on a long vine. So there we go. You can see that they can all be rescued. I would definitely go with pon if I'm attempting to rescue them. I think you have just far less chance of root rot, but you know, you have to keep it moist. So if you keep it too dry, it's not gonna work. And they're gonna need a lot of humidity, and I think you're gonna have more success if you use something like a heat mat, or if you do this in summer. If you do this in winter, definitely a heat mat, or I mean, depending on your room temperature, but I think around 25 degrees in the prop box would be ideal temperature with high humidity to really get these Hoyas going from the stems. I do have other Hoyas that have arrived really badly. My big Hoya caudata with big leaves, that one lost all the leaves. It was just a bare stem, and I grew it into a big plant that bloomed several times now. So definitely doable, don't give up hope, but I don't think it's gonna be a high success rate as with philodendrons. Philodendrons, you can easily recover them from a stump, anthuriums as well. Hoyas, it's a bit more difficult to get them going from a leafless node, but it's definitely possible, and it always helps when you are working with several nodes. What I would not do, and maybe I should have put this in the beginning, if you get a vine that has several nodes and it lost the leaves, keep it as a single vine. Don't cut it up into individual nodes. This is not an aroid. That is most likely not going to work that well. I haven't tried it, but I did try to save Hoyas with single, leafless nodes. It never actually worked for me to get them going from a single leafless node. I always had at least 2 nodes, I think. However, I did get them going from a single leafless node if the cutting was already rooted. So that, changes stuff a bit. Let me know how many Hoyas were you able to rescue, and how many Hoyas maybe, arrived as leafless vines or with a single leaf, but in bad condition. I'm not talking about healthy cutting with a single leaf. That's a different thing. I would like to hear, and I would like to hear about your methods for rescuing Hoyas, what you have found to work, what you have found not to work. If you like the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel, which doesn't really make sense, because if you like the video, you should give it a thumbs up, which is what I was trying to say. But, I mean, if you like the video, it also does make sense to subscribe. So do both, thumbs up and subscribe. Don't forget to leave a comment because it all helps. I think I already told you to have a wonderful week, but I don't think it hurts to repeat that. And see you in the next video. Goodbye! Ouch. I would like to take some time to thank my patrons. A massive shout out to my $5 patrons. My 3 anonymous patrons, Alex von Siebenthal, Anne-Margaret Moen, Anne C, Betsy Begonia, Carrie, Cynthia Taylor, Danube Daniels, Daria Kaminska, Farah, Gina Geise, Go Green Tropicals, Houseplant Heather, Hoya Heather, Jacques Planned Journey, Jessica Chio, Caleb Avra, Kelso, Kristen Sherwood, Lauren Alexandra, Le Plan de Steph, Mandy Milliken, Mars B, Marty Miller, Melissa Walker, Nicole Ferranti, Mirka Grunrus, okay, I'm positive that was not pronounced correctly. Nicole Moreau, Nicole and Caleb of Schleif Tropicals, Nita Macy, PJ, Rachel Colette Conroy, Robin L. Jennings, Sherry Kumar, Stephanie H2O, Tanya TJWO, Wendy Foreman, and Zlokov Nipani. Also, a big thank you to my $3 patrons, Angelina Farnan, Anne Margaret, Brianna Phillips, Kilone, Claudia L, Fluffy Blue Sheep, Jerry's Garden, Lisa Helling, Morgan Kennedy, Nella, Nerdy Kathy, Plan Druid, Plantalania, Ringlo, Shayla Mason Casper, and Tang Watanas Riakul. And a thank you to my $1 patrons, Brandon Pacheco, Carrie, Jacinta, Lauren M, Lori Ann Subramaniam, Luzmin Fernandez, Marissa, Neely Spicer, and Paula Plans. Thank you all so much for incredible support. I hope that you find this video fun and useful, but I do hope that you never have Hoya arrive in a terrible shape. Happy Halloween, stay scared, I hope you're watching a horror movie tonight, and that's it. See you next time.